just when you thought it couldn't get any nuttier, North Bristol steps in. Hi folks, I'm Gardner Goldsmith for MRC-TV. You know, people familiar with collectivism know that ethically and economically, state-run systems become races to the bottom. The problem is the bottom keeps getting lower, hence the new speech police in England at the North Bristol NHS Medical System, which is instituting the new Red Card to Racism program, a soccer-style system to deny service to patients deemed by the government as racist or sexist. And as the BBC reports, under the scheme, any patient abusing staff would be challenged and warned, leading to a sports-style disciplinary yellow card, followed by a final red card in which treatment would be withdrawn as soon as is safe. And who wouldn't be thrilled to have tons of his or her cash stolen by the state to fund a system that gives itself the power to deny medical care to said same taxpayer for things he or she might say. The abusive behavior covers racist or sexist language, gestures, or behavior. North Bristol Trust Chief Executive Andrea Young said they wanted staff to challenge and report it. And of course, the definitions of things like abusive and racist and malicious allegations are left up to the all-powerful, ever so trustworthy government, which is, well, kind of a problem. As Luis Miguel notes for The New American, in a highly publicized case from 2017, a female NHS patient complained when she requested a female nurse to carry out a cervical smear, only for the hospital to send a person with, quote, an obviously male appearance, close-cropped hair, a male facial appearance and voice, large number of tattoos, and facial stubble, end quote. When the patient pointed out what she believed to be a mistake, the nurse replied, "My gender is not male. I'm transsexual." Oh, man. Oh, man. In other words, a patient complaining she's being gynecologically examined by a pirate in drag could, according to the North Bristol NHS, be cited and denied service. Yeah, she could be denied service despite all the taxes the government stole from her to pay for it. In fact, the vagueness of this card policy could mean that even Brits who are proud of their socialistic government system could actually run into trouble. Get this. In 2017, for example, University Hospitals Bristol NHS Foundation Trust ordered the removal of the British flag from the stab vests of security personnel because the national banner was deemed offensive. So, this state-run system is so screwed up, it could ban people for wearing the flag of the collectivist system itself. I swear, somewhere the guys from Monty Python are taking notes on all this for its recursive absurdity. But this is actually par for the course. This is the collectivist we all pay system that in 2017 mandated that obese folks seeking elective surgery would be denied until they lost weight. It's the same system that in 2016 was exposed for trying to hide its plan to close clinics because it couldn't handle the expenses. It's the gulag of involuntary medicine caught using the bodies of aborted fetuses as fuel in hospital furnaces.
There's a report out of Britain claiming that 15,000 fetuses were incinerated at NHS hospitals and used sometimes to heat the hospitals as part of a waste-to-energy program. I know, it's unreal.
It is the collectivist system that was caught denying hydration and food to terminally ill patients in its so-called Liverpool pathway, a system that perhaps Obamacare co-creator Ezekiel Emanuel, brother to Chicago's infamous Clinton pal Rahm, might like, since he helped incorporate so-called best practices, i.e. death panels, into Obamacare to do essential essentially the same thing. And this is the NHS that recently fired a doctor who wouldn't conform to their speech dictates and instead would use pronouns that actually fit the proper sexes of the patients.
It's quite simply dishonest to use pronouns in that way. There's no other way of saying it. And as a Christian, it really matters whether we use language in an honest or a dishonest way. As a Christian in good conscience, I cannot do that because, quite simply, quite frankly, it's a lie. We're being told to live and practice a lie. It is a lie. We're not, I think, Andrew Williams, the head of Christian Concern here, has pointed out again and again, we are not helping people when we practice a lie. We cannot ever help people by practicing a lie.
It all happens because politicians and governments say that they can run the system. And that's a big lesson to take with us. And this is actually something we want to remember. It's the tragedy of the commons, where something is publicly run and everyone argues and gets upset over what it will or won't do. And that offers a second lesson to us in the United States, not just about medicine, which is almost entirely a collectivist semi-fascist system here, but about how important it is to know the difference between private property and public property. Indeed, and to know when the United States government began to blur those lines and put them into the same basket.
You didn't build that.
So keep this in mind. From government mandates that private store owners create genderless bathrooms to bans on smoking in private eateries, many people in the United States simply accept the idea that politicians can tell private business owners how to run their establishments. And that's because since 1946 and a terrible Supreme Court ruling in a case called Marsh v. Alabama, the feds had defined private property that's open for business as public property. In Marsh v. Alabama, a shipbuilding company that owned and ran its own small village of Chickasaw, Alabama, so that employees could stay closer to their workplace, asked a woman handing out religious pamphlets to leave the property. Well, she was cited for trespassing by police. And this ended up going to the Supreme Court. And the court ruled that the Gulf Shipbuilding Corporation had created in Chickasaw what they called a public square. And as a result, the court set this unctuous precedent that private property owners would no longer be able to control their own property as they saw fit. And subsequently, the 1964 Civil Rights Act included that idea in its public accommodations portion, turning the Supreme Court ruling into statute. Now, private property, which is supposed to be privately owned, on which you use your own money, is no longer recognized as private property, and it's termed public property.
Somebody invested in roads and bridges. If you got a business, you didn't build that. Somebody else made that happen.
But public property is that which uses tax money. There is a fundamental difference. That's why public property has such problems, because everybody who pays taxes wants to have a say in how it's run. And that's why we keep running into all these regulations being imposed on private businesses to include everybody, and the private businesses keep running into all their expenses and having problems actually operating, because they're no longer seen by the government as private property, which was supposed to be one of the major reasons why the government was created, to protect private property from being attacked by other people. Now the government is that machine which is the most dangerous thing to private property. We've got to keep this in mind. The Marsh v. Alabama Supreme Court ruling in 1946 and the 1964 public accommodations portion of the Civil Rights Act put United States businesses very close to the craziness that we see already with the British healthcare system. This is stuff to keep in mind, and I hope we can carry this with us as small lessons, even though this is nutty, bizarre stuff in another country. Hey, thanks so much for joining us. Don't forget, like and subscribe if you're watching on YouTube, spread the ideas to friends, and head over to MRCTV.org. Because as I've mentioned, there's always something happening, and many times we just don't have the opportunity to tell you about those in videos. For MRC-TV, I'm Gardner Goldsmith.